Israelite Heritage does not support any racial superiority doctrine.
That's right. In this video lesson, the King James Version of the Bible will be used to present all scripture reference. We at Israylite Heritage use the true names of the Father and Son, which are Yah and Yahoshua. Yah is the name of the Father, and Yahoshua is the name of the Son.
Keep your faith in Yah, knowing that He will never leave you. Keep your faith in Yah, He'll be there for anything you go through. Keep your faith in Yah, staying with you as you grow stronger. Keep your faith in Yah, you won't have to wait much longer.
Have to keep the faith, lean on Yah to keep you safe. Even when the path is crooked, rest assured He'll keep you straight. All you have to do is follow, you can let Him lead the way. Not worry about tomorrow, I get everything I need today. Of course I hear the scrutiny, don't let it take my sleep away. It's Yah over everything, what else do I need to say? Even if you slip and fall, problems they gon' get resolved. Place them in the Father's hands, cause He can get you through it all. When everybody disappears and friends they turn their back on you, people that you love from the rear they start attacking you. Count it as a blessing, never stressing we get tested for the proving of belief as we go strong and make corrections. Yah's will is manifested in the heavens and the earth. His knowledge and His wisdom is impossible to search. While the motto of the world is that seeing is believing, they don't know without faith it's impossible to please Him.
Keep your faith in Yah, knowing that He will never leave you. Keep your faith in Yah, He'll be there for anything you go through. Keep your faith in Yah, staying with you as you grow stronger. Keep your faith in Yah, you won't have to wait much longer.
Shalom, peace be upon you, and welcome to another Israelite Heritage video lesson. This lesson is being brought to you by Israylite Heritage Organization. And my name is Obadiah Israyl, and I'm one of the teachers at Israylite Heritage, and I'll be presenting this information to you today. This particular video lesson is a revising of one of our older video lessons called The Physical Appearance. And this lesson details from the Bible, from history and archaeology, that the ancient children of Israel, the Israelites that are spoken of from the beginning of the Bible to the end, that they are indeed what we call today a black-skinned people, a black people. Now, much has been said concerning who the Israelites are and who the Israelites were. And so much information has been put out into the public, but at the same time, a lot of disinformation has also gone out into the mainstream. So what we're going to do today is separate fact from fiction and bring the true history of the children of Israel. Now, many of you might say, well, why is this even important? Well, if you are a Bible believer, the Bible states that the children of Israel are the chosen people of the Most High. They were chosen according to the Most High Yah to bring forth the truth to all the sons of Adam, to all the nations that exist on the planet today. The children of Israel was given the job to bring them the truth. And so when we look at this, and there has been a conspiracy to hide the identity of the children of Israel. This conspiracy has gone on for a very long time. In fact, the Bible itself speaks of this conspiracy in the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verses 1 through 4. And the Bible states that it says, a Psalms of Asaph. Keep not your silence, O Yah. Hold not your peace, and be not still, O Yah. Now, real quick, the name Yah is the name of the Most High. This is found in the book of Psalms, chapter 68, verse 4. It can be found in the praise phrase, hallelujah, which means praise you, Yah. Even my name, Obadiah, means servant of Yah. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah. Yah is the name of the Most High. So in verse 2 it says, for lo, your enemies make atonement, and they that hate thee have lifted up their heads. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted against your hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So the Bible is the solid proof that there is a conspiracy to wipe away the knowledge of the ancient Israelites of who they are, take their knowledge away from them of who they are so they can be a lost people. We all may have heard the term the lost tribes of Israel, where Israel is a lost people because their knowledge of who they are has been taken. So let's go through the Bible and let's look at the physical appearance of the children of Israel. Now, the children of Israel are key figures in the Bible. They're mentioned over 2,500 times from the book of Genesis to the book of Revelation. The Bible gives us detailed information about the Israelites' interaction with the Most High Yah. The scriptures were never intended to be a religious book. It is history, it is instructions, and it is prophecy. It is a book of life. Now let's examine these facts that the Bible gives us about the children of Israel. Now the first place we want to start off at is in the book of Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10 is known as the Table of Nations. Right after the great flood, Noah and his family, which totaled 8 people, were saved from the catastrophe of the flood that wiped out every living being on the planet except these 8 people. And from these 8 people, the entire world was repopulated after the great flood. You know, Noah and the ark, the story of Noah and the ark. So Noah had 3 sons. His 3 sons' names were Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And from these 3 sons, every nation on earth can trace their descent back. So when we look at the descendants of Noah's sons, if we go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 1, it says, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were born sons after the flood. So scholars have traced, and rightfully so, they have traced the sons of Japheth to the people we call the Europeans or Gentiles, or in another term, we call them whites. So the sons of Japheth are the European or the Gentile nations. And if you go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 2, it says, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. All of these can be traced back to nations that inhabited the area of Europe. Now, in verse 5 of Genesis chapter 10, it says, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided into their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations. Now, there's no such thing in the Bible as race. Race is a non-existing concept within Scripture, because the concept of race was created by deceived men who tried to deceive the world, and this was another part of their coming together to deceive the world of who the children of Israel are. Because in the concept of race, instead of having men by their nations or nationalities, the concept of race say you got a white race, you got a black race, you got a red race, you got a yellow race, and you got a brown race based on the coloring of people's skin. The Bible does not do that. The Bible says that everybody is divided according to their language, according to their family descent, and their heritage. So you are nations of people, nationalities, not races. Now, the concept of race, this is where white and black fits in. But you will see that the Bible does not describe the sons of Japheth as being white. It calls them Gentiles because the word Gentile comes from the Hebrew word goy, and it means nation. because the children of Israel were not familiar with the nationality of the people who lived north of them in Europe. They were familiar with the people that surrounded them, like the Egyptians, like the Canaanites, like the Hittites, like the Edomites, and all these people that surrounded the land of Israel. We knew them by their nationality, but the people in Europe, they were just one grouping, and we just called them the nations or the Gentiles or the Goy. So whenever you hear about Gentiles in Scripture, is referring to the people of Europe or the sons of Japhet. Once again, Genesis chapter 10, verse 5 says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations." Not in their races, but in their nations. Now, next, the sons of Ham. Noah's son Ham. The sons of Ham have been traced to the families of the continent of Africa. In fact, when you look at Ham's descendants here, Ham is a Hebrew word that means hot, burnt, and black. And it also, in Hebrew, his name is pronounced as Kam. So when you look at his descendants, he had 4 sons. It says, and the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Now the Cush, let's look at Cush first. Cush in the ancient times were known as the Cushites by the Hebrews, and others called them the Nubians or the Ethiopians. In fact, the word Ethiopia comes from the Greek word Aethiops, and it means burnt or black face. And then the next son of Ham was Mizraim. Mizraim is the Hebrew name for Egypt, the Egyptians. And the Egyptians called themselves Kemet. And so they are showing that they were descendants of Ham by that term, Kemet, because in Hebrew, once again, the name Ham means calm. Kemet is just a word play on that because it means the exact same thing. And so the Egyptians were descendants of Ham. So the Ethiopians and the Egyptians were blood brothers according to their descent, according to the Bible. Then we got Put. Put were the ancient Somalians, and then we got Canaan. Canaan were the original inhabitants of the land of Canaan, which we conquered, and it became the land of Israel. So these are the sons of Ham. They are the families of Africa. And so when you go into the descent of each and every descendant of Ham, when you go into their descent, reading in Genesis chapter 10, you will see that Ham had the most descendants, and not only did they populate Africa, but they also populated in the area of what's called the Mideast, because Cush, Ham's son Cush, had a son named Nimrod. Nimrod founded a kingdom called Babylon, and within Babylon, he founded a lot of different nations. Babylon, the ancient Babylon, is located today in modern-day Iraq. So Ham's descendants populated Africa and over in what's called the Mideast, and what they call the cradle of civilization. So the sons of Ham are the families of Africa: the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Somalians, and the Canaanites, the Libyans, all of that. Those are the sons of Ham. And so even in history, the archaeological record shows that the sons of Ham were black-skinned people. There go the Egyptians. There go the Ethiopians. There go the ancient Somalians. And there go the ancient Canaanites. All of these people are black-skinned people. And this is important for you to understand, because as we go through this video lesson here, we're going to show that the children of Israel look just like the sons of Ham. They were black-skinned people. And this is important, once again, because of the recent, I don't even know what the title to put to it, but the recent movie called Exodus, Gods and Kings, that came out in December of 2014. This movie has caused a lot of stir among not only the Hebrew Israelite community, but also others. And they're saying, well, this isn't right because you got all these white characters playing black characters. Moses was a black man. So were all the children of Israel who were in Egypt. And we're going to prove that from the Bible itself to show you the story of Moses and how what they're showing you in this movie, Exodus, Gods, and Kings, don't match up to the biblical record, doesn't match up to the archaeological record, and doesn't match up to the history. Not at all. So if they're showing us lies, and the Bible is a book of truth, the Bible says in John chapter 8, verse 32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So what we're going to show in this is that the original children of Israel that were slaves in Egypt, they were black people. And then when you look at the descent and you look at what Yah the Most High put upon them called the curses, you will see that those black people are the same ones that were brought into slavery nearly 400 years ago into the United States, into Jamaica, into Haiti, into the Dominican Republic, into Cuba, into Puerto Rico, into the entire Western Hemisphere. Those slaves, because that event in itself was prophesied to happen, that we will come into slavery in ships. So now let's look at Noah's third son, Shem. Shem is who the children of Israel are descended from. Matter of fact, we are descendants of Shem, Noah's son Shem, through our father Abraham. So Abraham, who is a descendant of Shem, had a son named Isaac. Isaac had a son named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, and these 12 sons of Jacob became the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 12 individual families that made up the one nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. Now, many of you may look in Egypt today and say, well, Obadiah, I've seen Egypt and they don't look like black people. They don't look like, quote unquote, what the world calls black or African. Well, in the 7th century, brothers and sisters of the Common Era, CE, Egypt was overtaken by Islam Arabs at the arrival of Islam by the Islamic prophet Muhammad. And the Arabs took over Egypt during that time, and they have dwelt there ever since. And Egypt is an Arab republic. Now, we're going to start this off looking at the children of Israel the time they spent in the land of Egypt. The children of Israel spent 430 years inside of Egypt before we were given our land. Now, let me just go back real quick. Yah, the Most High, made a covenant with our father Abraham. He promised to give Abraham the land of Canaan, and that Abraham's descendants will live in that land for as long as they are obedient to the word and ways of Yah. Now, before we got into the land of Canaan, we were a nomadic people. In fact, this is where the term Hebrew comes from. The word Hebrew means a wanderer. And it also carries the meaning to cross over, because, we were the people that crossed over Jordan to go home to the land of Israel. So the word Hebrew is a wanderer. It is equivalent to the modern word of nomadic, a people that's always on the move. So our father Abraham was always on the move. He was the first in scripture to be called a Hebrew. In fact, let's read that in the book of Genesis chapter 14, verse 13. And it states, "And there came one that had escaped, and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Escod, and brother of Atner, and these were confederate with Abram." And the Egyptians in their records called us Habaru, and it takes on the same meaning as Hebrew. Because our brother Joseph, one of the 12 sons of our father Jacob, Joseph was one of the 12 sons. In fact, let's read off the 12 sons. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Joseph, Benjamin. So these were the 12 sons of our father Jacob, and these men made up the 12 tribes, their families, and all the way down. These are our founding fathers. And so Joseph, being the 11th born son of his father Jacob, a situation happened when Joseph was sent down into Egypt into slavery. And while he was down there, he became second in command. He interpreted a dream for Pharaoh. And so he became second in command. So a great famine broke out, and Joseph knew that that at a time at that famine that the Egyptians had to prepare for this famine. So they put up 7 years of grain for when the famine struck. So the famine affected all the known area around the land of Israel, Egypt, and so forth and so on. So the children of Israel, who were still the 12 sons before their population even grew into the nation, they came down to Egypt to buy some grain from the Egyptians. They didn't know that their brother Joseph was still alive. They didn't know that he was the second in command in Egypt. So this whole thing transpired. And so what happened is eventually the children of Israel came down to Egypt to live once Joseph found out, once they found out that was their brother Joseph. He was second in command. So he brought all his family. So we lived down in Egypt. But a period of time had elapsed, and a Pharaoh rose up who did not know Joseph. It did not know the good works that Joseph had done for the Egyptians. And so this Pharaoh looked up and said, wait a minute. These children of Israel are more and mightier than we are. Now, if they break out a war, they will join unto our enemies and they will come against us and fight against us. And so this is a fear that the Egyptians had. So what happened was that this Pharaoh said, okay, we got to put them into slavery. We got to put them into slavery. We got to break them down. We got to stop their population from growing. And this is what the Pharaoh thought to do. Okay. So now that brings us up to the time of Moses. Because when the children of Israel was in slavery, this is the time that Moses was born. So the Pharaoh said, okay, we got to put them into slavery. They put us into slavery. That still didn't stop our population from growing. We were still a populous people as we still are today. So Pharaoh came up with this plan. He said, listen, what we got to do is that we just have to remove the males from their population. So he told the midwives, the women that were responsible for delivering the Hebrew women children, he said, listen, in Exodus chapter 1, verse 16, this is what Pharaoh told the midwives to do. He said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. So he implemented his own form of birth control, saying, kill off all the sons, but let the daughters live. Because if you take all the men out of any population, you stop that population from growing. So the Egyptians could have mixed with the Hebrew women, and the children would have came out still looking like the Egyptian father, and they would have still just mixed in with the Egyptian population, and the Hebrews would have been wiped out. So this is even a plan we see today: take out the man, and we can stop that population from growing. That's why you see all the trouble against the black male, even in the United States, getting shot by the police, being hung, being lynched. All of that is to remove the male out of the population. So this is what Pharaoh said back then. Now let's go to Exodus chapter 2, because Moses. This is the same time frame that Moses was born. Now remember, he said, if it's a son, kill him. If it's a daughter, then she shall live. Okay? So we want to go to Exodus chapter 2, and we want to pick up the story of Moses, because this is a very interesting story. And not only is it a very interesting story, but it goes against even these movies, the 10 Commandments that came out in 1956, the 10 Commandments that was made for an ABC movie on ABC television, regular television, in 2006, and even the 2014 movie, the Exodus, Gods and Kings. All of them have Moses portrayed by a white actor, by a Gentile actor. Now, this isn't true. Now, if we're going to deal with the Bible, remember, we have to deal with all truth, because you may sit back and say, well, it doesn't matter. Why doesn't truth matter to you? Why is it that they can get away with lying, constantly lying, and then if they're lying about this, something that is obvious, what else are they lying to you about concerning the Bible? This should be a thought on everybody's heart, on everybody's mind. If they can do this with a $200 million movie that millions of people are going to go see, and they're putting a lie right before your face, you need to question, what else have they lied to you about? Everything. When you dig down into it, you will see everything. So Exodus chapter 2, we're looking at the time of Moses now. Remember, Pharaoh said, kill baby boys at birth, right? Kill them at birth. Okay, so Moses is born around this same time. Now, real quick, before we go to Exodus chapter 2, let's go to Exodus chapter 1. Let's go back up to chapter 1, and let's read verse 22, because this is very important to understand. Also, because once he charged the midwives with killing them, the midwives refused because they feared the Most High Yah. So Pharaoh said this to his people. He said in Exodus chapter 1, verse 22, Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born you should cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. Now he charged his people. So any Egyptian that sees a Hebrew baby boy born, they were to kill the child on sight. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2. We're looking at the story of Moses now. This is the same time frame when Moses, when he was born, he was supposed to be killed. He was supposed to be drowned. He was supposed to be thrown into the Nile River and stopped from breathing. So Exodus chapter 2, verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. Now remember, Levi was one of the sons of Jacob. So the Levites is what this particular tribe was called. Verse 2. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. Okay. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrush and dabbed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. Okay, brink, I'm sorry. So the woman conceived. This is Moses' father and this is Moses' mother. This is Moses being born. She saw that he was a goodly child and she hid him 3 months. Now, when you are a mother, and the mother first sees her child, that love that is there, that extreme, unconditional, overwhelming love. She saw her child and she just couldn't, so she hid him 3 months, but he's just a little baby. Remember, babies cry for everything. When they're hungry, they cry. When they're sad, they cry. When they, want attention, they cry, because this is their only form of communication. So she could not hide him. No longer, he's 3 months old, because any Egyptian who have heard that child crying was supposed to come get it, throw it in the Nile River, and kill it. Okay, so she could no longer hide him. So she took for him an ark of bulrush. So she made a little basket, made a little box, and she put him in there. And she put the child in the river's brink. Just get it out of her way, because she couldn't stand to see her child killed before her face. Because if any Egyptian had found that child, that's what would have happened. So this is a very interesting event that's taking place here. Now in Exodus chapter 2, verse 5, it says, "And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it." Okay, verse 6. "And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, 'This is one of the Hebrews' children.'" Okay. She had compassion like any woman would. This is a crying child. But what did her father say to do? In Exodus chapter 1, verse 22. He said, "Throw it in the river." She's already in the river. She's taking a bath. So what she was supposed to do was open the basket up and immediately kill that Hebrew baby. But she knew it was a Hebrew baby because she knew it was a desperate situation. What Egyptian's going to throw their baby away? Right? But it was a desperate situation of the Hebrews. Right? This is even during the times when we were in slavery in the United States and all throughout the Western Hemisphere. Some of the mothers would take their children, just storm out into the woods to prevent the slave master from getting them, to prevent him from killing them, to prevent him from separating them. They were doing desperate situations. Maybe somebody would find the baby out in the woods and take care of it. But if I see it killed right in front of my face, I see it taken right in front of my face, I know there's no good going to come to it. So in Exodus, let's skip up to verse 4. Exodus chapter 2, verse 4 says, "And his sister stood afar off to watch what would be done to him." Right? So you got little Miriam going to see what's going to become of her baby brother. She wants to know. So let's go down to verse 7 now. We just read verse 4. Let's skip down to verse 7. Now she saw that Pharaoh's daughter had got the baby and she didn't kill him. So verse 7. "Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, 'Shall I go and call to you a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?' Verse 8. "And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Go.' And the maid went and called the child's mother." So little Miriam, Moses' sister, said, "Wait a minute, I can go get one of the Hebrew women to take care of the child for you to nurse," because, hey, Pharaoh's daughter didn't have a child, so she had no milk in her breast to nurse a child. But Moses' mother did. So little Miriam, being as smart and wise as she was a prophetess, she went and got her own mother. So now Moses' mother is, not only is Moses going to live, but his own mother is going to raise him and be paid to raise him as a prince of Egypt. That's how Yah works. Okay. Verse 8. "And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Go.' And the maid went and called the child's mother." Verse 9. "And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, 'Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages.' And the woman took the child and nursed it." So Moses was raised by his own mother. This is why Moses always knew he was a Hebrew, and it was a secret. Now Pharaoh's daughter is going to take Moses as her son. Verse 10. "And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses, and she said, 'Because I drew him out of the water.'" You understand what I'm saying? Look at this. She took Moses as her son. Now this is Pharaoh's own daughter, and Pharaoh charged his own people to become baby murderers, to become child killers. So how is it possible that his own daughter can come in there with a little Hebrew baby boy and present him to her father? as her own child, and this child is raised in the house of Pharaoh as a prince with all the privileges of a royal prince. Now that would make Pharaoh look bad if Moses could not have passed for his grandson. So what is this story telling us? It's telling us that the Israelites and the Egyptians look just alike physically. The Egyptians were black Africans, and the Hebrews looked just like them and looked like them so much that Moses stayed in the house of Pharaoh for 40 years. So for 40 long years, Moses stayed in the house of Pharaoh, passing as the grandson of Pharaoh. And the only way that can happen was only if Moses looked like Pharaoh. 40 years. So that's in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 23, which states, "And when he was full 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel." Acts chapter 7 is talking about Moses, and it's talking about the children of Israel. So Acts chapter 7, verse 23 says Moses was 40. So as a little toddler, Pharaoh looked into Moses' eyes and said, "This is my grandson." Right? So as a little boy, Pharaoh looked into Moses' eyes and said, "This is my grandson." Right? As a teenager, Pharaoh looked into Moses' eyes and said, "This is my grandson." Moses was in line to possibly become the next Pharaoh of Egypt at a time when all of his little boy brethren were being killed by Egyptian authority. You see this story, right? Okay. So Pharaoh looked into the eyes of Moses as a young man in his 20s. Pharaoh looked into the eyes of Moses as a young man in his 30s. Pharaoh looked into the eyes of Moses, full 40 years old, as a young man, said, "This is my grandson." You understand? You see this? Moses passed as an Egyptian without even Pharaoh himself knowing it. Because had Pharaoh known it, he would have killed Moses instantly, because it would have been a stain on Pharaoh and on his rule to have his people to kill Hebrews, and here he got one living in a palace. He didn't know Moses was a Hebrew, because Moses and the Israelites looked just like the Egyptians. Now, many scholars that say that the Pharaoh that ruled Egypt at the time of Moses' birth was a Pharaoh by the name of Seti the First. Seti the First. He was the father of Ramesses II, and this is even in the movie Exodus. This is in the movie The Ten Commandments. Both Ten Commandments movies, they identify Pharaoh Seti as being the Pharaoh that was on the throne. But here go images of Seti the First from the walls of Egypt. Who are you going to believe? So here you have the Hollywood version of Pharaoh Seti the First from the Ten Commandments, from the Ten Commandments 2006, and from Exodus, Gods and Kings 2014. Here are images of Moses, Ten Commandments. Ben Kingsley played Moses in a 1995 TV movie called Moses. But this has no bearing on what the archaeological record is showing us. So if Moses passed as an Egyptian to pass as the Pharaoh's grandson, then Moses had to look like Pharaoh. Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, verses 11 and 12, it says, "And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burden and spied on the Egyptians smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand." So Moses, remember, he grew up, his mother had taught him it was a Hebrew. She raised him, right? So it was a secret that Moses was a Hebrew. His mother knew, he knew, and Pharaoh's daughter knew. Right? Okay. So Here it is. Now the big secret is about to come out. Let's go to verse 13. Exodus chapter 2, verse 13. And when he went out the second day, behold, two men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smite your fellow? Or why did you kill your brother? Verse 14. And he said, who made you a prince and a judge over us? Intend you to kill me as you killed that Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Let's stop right there. Because in verse 15, what we're going to get is that Moses, well, let's read verse 15, then let's come back and explain, surely this thing is known. Verse 15, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now, look at this. It said, surely, in verse 14, surely this thing is known. What is meant by that? What thing is known? And what thing, when this thing was known, this thing made Pharaoh want to kill Moses. The thing that was known was found out by Pharaoh that Moses was not an Egyptian by blood, but he was a Hebrew. So this thing got found out and Pharaoh wanted to kill him. Why? Because Pharaoh had already ordered all of his people to kill Hebrew boys at birth. So here it is now. This is a stain on his throne. Now, many of you may say, well, Obadiah, how's that possible? Wouldn't Pharaoh know if his daughter was pregnant or not? How many of you all have ever seen the movie Coming to America? I'm pretty sure we all have. That was a scene in there in Coming to America where Hakeem the Prince and his father were at the breakfast table, and Hakeem was way down on one end, his father was way down on the other. So Hakeem left where he was, and he came down where his father and mother was, and they were shocked that he was coming that close to them. And then when he got down and he sat down with his father said, wow, you grew a mustache.
You've grown a mustache.
And his mother said, what? He's had that for a whole year now. His father didn't even know that he had grown a mustache. Back in those days, the kings, they didn't sit down and raise their children. Just like the rich folk today don't raise their children. They have nannies and things like that. You know, they hardly even know their children. And so this is how it was in the ancient time. Pharaoh had so many daughters and so many children, he didn't know who was pregnant and who not. He was too busy attending to the affairs of the country and being king. So how could Christian Bale, somebody look like Christian Bale or somebody look like Charleston Heston pass as his grandson without him having a, just suspecting something? This is just real. This is not racism. This is not racist. This is the truth. And see, we got to learn to deal with the truth. What is racist is that movie Exodus, Gods and Kings. What is racist is those 10 Commandment movies. What is racist is all those Messiah or Jesus movies. That's racism. This is not. This is truth. And I hope that you can handle the truth. So Exodus chapter 2, verse 16, it says, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water. Now remember, Moses had dwelt by a well as soon as he fled Egypt. It said, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. So this priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they were coming to get water so they can go back and water their flock, their sheep, the goat, and so forth. And the shepherds came down and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flocks. So verse 18. And when they came to Ruel, their father, he said, how is it that you come so soon today? So he was surprised. Wow, normally they take y'all, an hour and a half, to walk with these big buckets of water on your head, just like the sisters do throughout Africa. The Israelite sisters and the Africans do throughout Africa, right? Put the big buckets of water on their head and walk miles with it. So the father was like, wait a minute, how y'all come back so soon today? Normally they take y'all, 2 hours, but today you back in 30 minutes. I mean, look at what the daughters replied. Verse 19 of Exodus chapter 2. And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. They said an Egyptian delivered us. Moses was a Hebrew, but he looked like an Egyptian. They didn't say that a Hebrew dressed up as an Egyptian, because had the Israelites been a white-skinned people, then they could have said that. But they said an Egyptian. They couldn't tell Moses apart, just like Pharaoh couldn't. So here you have it once again, Hollywood version of the ancient Egyptians here. You see all these images? This is from Hollywood. This is what they say. This is what they do. they said, the daughter said, an Egyptian delivered us. Here go images of Egyptians. Look at that. I'm just showing you what is fact. So when they said an Egyptian delivered us, this is what they were describing. This is what they saw. Images like this. This is what they saw. They wasn't making this up. How many of you all knew that the Apostle Paul, whose name in Hebrew is Shaul, and he was an emissary. So the emissary Shaul, or you may know him as the Apostle Paul, was mistaken for an Egyptian. Now we know Paul was an Israelite according to Philippians chapter 3, verse 5. Philippians chapter 3, verse 5 says, circumcised the 8th day, the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, as touching the law, a Pharisee. This is Shaul speaking. He was a Hebrew of Hebrews. Let's go to Romans chapter 11, verse 1. This is what it says. I say then, have Yah cast away his people? Yah forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. So Paul, Shaul, was an Israelite of the tribe of Benjamin. So he was a Hebrew Israelite, right? Okay, but let's look at this. Let's go to Acts chapter 21, verse 36. Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian. Matter of fact, what was going on here was that Paul had got arrested by a Greek guard. Shaul, or Paul, who was bilingual, spoke Hebrew and Greek. He was trying to plead a case to the guard. Now, that was a big ruckus that had took place because Shaul was trying to speak to the Hebrew people and tell them more about the Messiah, Yahushua. Now, in this during this time, he got arrested. He got himself arrested by one of the Greek guards. And look at this, Acts chapter 21, verse 36. We're going to read all the way down to verse 39. Acts 21:36. For the multitude of the people followed after, crying, away with him. And as Paul was being led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto you? Who said, can you speak Greek? So the chief captain looking at him and wait a minute, you can speak Greek? Wow. He was surprised that Paul could speak Greek. Why was he surprised that Paul could speak Greek? Verse 38. Aren't you that Egyptian, which before these days made an uproar and led out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers? Verse 39. But Paul said, Shaul said, I am a man which am an Israelite of Tarsus, a city in Sicilia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. Let me speak unto the people. He thought Paul was an Egyptian. This Israelite who had to tell him, I'm not an Egyptian, I'm an Israelite. Because the Hebrews and the Egyptians look just alike physically, even in the New Testament time. And the New Testament time, we're talking about after the Greeks ruled Israel and Egypt. After the Romans, well, not after, but the Romans were ruling at this time. So after foreign conquest, the Hebrews and the Egyptians still look alike. Just like when we go back to the Old Testament, the Hebrews and the Egyptians look just alike physically. This Greek was surprised that Paul can even speak Greek. Aren't you that Egyptian? Look at these images of King Tut. You see this? Now, this what you see right here. This is an image that was created of the Egyptian king, King Tut. His tomb was found in Egypt in 1922. It had his whole tomb was intact, his body, everything. And so they scanned his skull and they said that this is what he looked like when he lived. This image that it was made from using forensic science technology. This was made in 2005. Now they have a newer image that they made in 2006 when the one in 2005 was too much for them to handle, so they had to come back and try to lie to you even more in 2006 and say, wait a minute, no, the one in 2005 was all wrong. This is the actual image. You know, this feminine looking King Tut, which there's no record of King Tut looking anything like you see right here of this new image in 2006. This new image looked more like Boy George, doesn't it? Because here are images that the Egyptians made of King Tut. The Messiah, many of you call him the Christ, but Christ is a Greek word. The Messiah is a word that means anointed of Yah. And the Messiah's name, as you've already been told, his name is Yahoshua, which means Yah's salvation. It was not Jesus. There's no letter J in Greek, Latin, or Hebrew. So the letter J is about 400 years old, almost 400 years old in the English alphabet. It just came into the English alphabet. So 2,000 years ago, there was nobody named Jesus. You already knew that, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Okay. So the Messiah himself had to be taken into Egypt to hide. King Herod, who was ruling on the throne of Israel at the time of the Messiah's birth, when the wise men came and told him, where is he who was born king of Israel? And King Herod did not want anybody to be on that throne other than himself. So the wise men said, we're going to go find him and we'll tell you about him. So they were gone for a period of 2 years. So King Herod said, wait a minute, where are those wise men? I need to know who this new king is that's going to come in here and try to take my throne and be king over Israel. So what Herod did was that he enacted another form of genocide upon the Hebrew male, is that he said, kill these little boys that are 2 years and under. Go through Israel and kill them all up. Right? So at this time, Yahushua was already born. He was living in Israel. So the angel had to come and warn his father that they are to flee and hide in Egypt while Herod is still on the throne, because he's trying to find Yahushua to kill him. In the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verse 13, it says, and when they were departed, behold, the angel of Yah appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be you there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Right? What did he say? Take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be there until I give you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Verse 14. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. They went and they hid in Egypt, brothers and sisters. They were hiding in Egypt. They were hiding from the wrath of King Herod. Why didn't you, if Yahushua looked like all the images of the Christian Christ, all the images that have ever been made of him, coming out of Europe, if he looked like that, how could he hide among the black-skinned Egyptians? Why would Yah even send him there? Send him deep into Africa to hide. Right? Why not take him into Europe? Why not take him into Rome? Why not take him into Italy? Why not take him into France, where the Gentiles were living? He said, take him into Egypt. Just like Moses hid in Egypt, Yahushua, who was an Israelite too, can hide in Egypt.
All right. Question for our audience. What color was Jesus? What color?
Black.
Black? What color was he? Jesus was a human. If you're a Christian, you believe that he was the second son of the Blessed Trinity. He was the Son of God. He was divine, but he was expressed in his 33 years on earth as a human being. And now coming forward are not a few very, very active people to say that the presentation of a white Jesus down through history before people of color has served to characterize the Caucasian as superior, as the best, as better than others. And more than that, has perpetuated a lie on the people of color and continued their enslavement.
That's right.
Here's who's here. Blair Underwood joins us from L.A. Law. How? Blair needs no lecture on this. A lot of black folks don't go for this black Jesus at all. Been praying to a white Jesus all their lives. This is their Jesus. And no activist of the moment is going to come along and rip that imagery out of their soul. And they're just as proud of their blackness as anybody else. It doesn't have to do with all this psychological stuff that you newfangled people keep bringing on. Blair Underwood has produced it's misleading to call it a movie. It's a 30-minute short film. Yeah, a 30-minute film in which he plays Jesus. Let me show you just a piece of that, Blair, and then we'll gab here a little bit. Jesus, this is the crucifixion. This is right at the beginning of the film. Just a moment to show you. Watch.
Forget it. The only Jesus I know is him, and the one thing he don't need is a partner. Hush up, both of you. This picture has been in my family for as long as I can remember. When I was a baby, I don't know what I saw first. My mama, my papa, or this Jesus. Now, he's the one I know and love, so let's close the subject. Jesus was black, the Bible would have said so.
But it does say so.
What are you talking about?
I read about it. It's in Revelation chapter 1, verse 14. It says, his hair is like wool, and his eyes are like flame of fire.
Well, Lord have mercy. You sure do say that, don't it?
And see, Mama, look at that hair, like wool, ain't it? And look at them eyes, red like fire.
Yeah, they sure
Mama,
is.
how do we know Jesus wasn't black? He could have been from the lost tribe of Israel. They were supposed to be black.
I bet they were. If ever people were lost, we're it. If ever people were lost, we're it.
You see this image right here? This is another image that they made and said that this is what the Egyptian queen Cleopatra looked like. Right? So they give you all of this, all of these Gentiles, and they say that this is what the Egyptians look like, but the history says different. The Egyptians had their hair in locks. They had them in what's called dreadlocks, but we don't call them dreadlocks. They're called locks because the hair locks up. They had the hair in braids. They had woolly hair. And they dyed their hair many different colors. They dyed it blonde, they dyed it red. I want you to look at this image right here. Another image of the Queen Nefertiti this image was also created from forensic science. They said that when this woman lived, this is what she looked like. This is the Egyptian Queen Nefertiti. She was the stepmother to King Tut, and she was the wife of King Tut's father, Amenhotep IV, or he changed his name to Akhenaten. But remember this video Michael Jackson did with the Egyptian theme? Remember the Time? Remember that video? One of my favorite videos because it had the whole black Egyptian theme, like it should properly be. But he had in there the Somalian model to portray Queen Nefertiti, Iman. Her name is Iman. She's a model, right? And when you look at her in her full Egyptian gear, she looks just like all of the ancient images of the Egyptians. Now remember, the Somalians were blood brothers to the Egyptians and the Ethiopians. So they all would have looked like this. You see this? Remember the time. This is what the Egyptians would have looked like. The deception is rooted even deeper than Hollywood. How has this lie that the Hebrews and Egyptians and other black-skinned people were European, how has this lasted so long? See, this deception goes deeper than lying through books and movies. Did you know that it's part of the United States law? Do you know that they say anybody that comes out of Egypt, no matter how black they are, no matter how woolly their hair is, that they are classified as white? There's a guy right now who is fighting the United States government so that he can be classified as black instead of white. His name is Mustafa Hefni, and he's a black Egyptian immigrant. And he sued the United States government because they classified him as being white, even though he's obviously black. This is him on your screen.
I am a black Egyptian. My father is much darker than I am. My mother is lighter than I am. In Egypt, people are identified by the religion first, not the race. So in Egypt, if you are Christian, you are a minority person. But if you're black, you're not a minority person. You are a part of the mainstream society. And I came from this background. And in Egypt, you identify as Arab and as Muslim. And in this country, when I first came, I identified myself as Arab American and Muslim first. And gradually, I became to identify myself as black. I came to the U.S. in 1978, and I became a U.S. citizen in 1985. When I became a U.S. resident, I was told by the Immigration and Naturalization that I am white. And I told them that I'm black, and they said, no, in this country, you are white. All Arabs in this country, all Arab immigrants are white. I didn't pay much attention in the beginning to this, because in the Arab world, we identify with our ethnicity first as Arabs, and then with the race second as black or white or whatever. But in this country, you identify with your racial group first and then with your ethnicity second. Gradually, I became black first and Arab second. And I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February, as a panelist in a function sponsored by the Association of the Study of Black Life and History in Detroit. I said that I belong to two minority groups. I am Arab American and Black American, and I'm racially black and ethnically Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school district. The superintendent is white. All the associate superintendents are white, even though that we provide services to 30% black population. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after I went out publicly and rejected my white classification. One coworker came to me and told me, a white coworker came to me and told me right after the function that he met with the superintendent, and if I don't keep my mouth shut, my educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people, you have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle, you have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police. And I was told by the director of general education, who is retired now, in '88, I was told by him that I get people angry when I say that I'm black Egyptian. If I just say that I'm Egyptian, I would get along. I have to add that I was denied promotion twice because I chose black classification. This is part of my 2 lawsuits against my employer, which are currently pending. 2 lawsuits.
Now, he came to the United States in 1978, and he is a natural-born Egyptian. And according to the United States Office of Management and Budget Standards for the classification of federal data on race and ethnicity, citizens are designated as white if they have origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, North Africa, or what's called the Middle East. Or, in other words, no matter how black they are, no matter how much, how like I say, how woolly the hair is, if you come from Egypt, you come from the Middle East, all Arabs are classified as white. You see this? So it's ingrained in their laws. These lies are ingrained in their laws. Let's go back to the story of Moses. See, you don't get this in your mainstream movies. They leave this out. Or they try to switch it up and they try to deceive you. See, when Yah came to Moses, Moses left when he was 40 years old, left Egypt at 40. He went into Midian and he stayed there 40 years. So now Moses is a man of 80 years old. Now Yah came to Moses and said, Moses, listen, I've heard their cry. I heard my people's cry in Egypt. They are being put into slavery. That slavery is harsh on them, Moses. I've heard it. I'm ready to go get my people. Let's go to Exodus chapter 3. We're going to read verses 7 and 8. Exodus chapter 3, verses 7 and 8. Exodus 3, verses 7 and 8. Look at this. And Yah said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrow. And I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. So this is what Yah say, Moses, you going down to deliver my people. So in Exodus chapter 4, verse 1, let's go to Exodus chapter 4, the book of Exodus chapter 4, verse 1, it says, And Moses answered and said, But behold, they would not believe me nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Yah had not appeared unto you. Verse 2. And Yah said unto him, What is it? What is in your hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from before it. Now, they put this in the Ten Commandments movies right here. Yah said, I'm going to show you a sign, Moses. Put your rod on the ground. Put your staff down. Bam, it turns into a serpent. Who can do that, right? You know this got to be the power of Yah. Okay, so if I show the children of Israel this, they're going to know. Verse 4. Yah's going to give them another sign, which is a greater sign. Yah said unto Moses, Put forth your hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and he caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. So Moses was like, wow, right? This got to be Yah. Verse 5. That they may believe that Yah their fathers, the power of Abraham, the power of Isaac, and the power of Jacob had appeared unto you. The second sign is the most powerful of these two that we're about to see. And it wasn't in the 1956 version. This is what Yah had told Moses in verse 6, Exodus chapter 4, verse 6. And Yah said furthermore unto him, Put now your hand into your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. This word leprous means white. Leprosy was a disease that turned the dark skin white, turned it from dark to white. Leprosy in modern times is called vitiligo. It is the disease called vitiligo, the disease which Michael Jackson himself said that he had. You see these images on the screen of Michael? You can see the spots starting to take place, and this is why he went on and bleached his skin so he can even it out. Michael actually had this disease called vitiligo, which turned his brown skin to white. very white. And so this vitiligo is what the ancient leprosy was. Ancient day leprosy. So Yah said, Moses, put your hand into your bosom. He put it in there. He took it out. It was white as snow. Wait a minute. If Moses' skin color was already the same skin color as Charleston Heston, or the same skin color as Christian Bale, now remember, Yah showing Moses his power. He's showing him a sign. He's showing him miracles. So he can go to the children of Israel and show that this is Yah who sent me. I turned my staff into a snake. Now I'm showing you, I'm putting your hand into your bosom. Bam, and you take it out instantly. It's white. Yeah. Let's go to Exodus chapter 4, verse 7. Exodus chapter 4, verse 7. It says, and he said, put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Look at that. So his other flesh was other than white. It was dark. So he put his hand back in his bosom and it returned to his natural color. I'm just showing you there's plenty of evidence that the children of Israel were a black-skinned people. So when the leprosy was all over the whole body, that's called you're clean now. And it's somewhat similar to albinos who are born without any, they're black-skinned people, but they're born without any color in their skin. But they still have that lineage. So this is what it was when you say a clean leper. So I'm not saying anything against albinos or not anything against anybody with vitiligo. No way. No. I'm just using it as a reference point so you can understand. As you see all these images flashing on your screen, right? I pray that this makes sense to you because it is the truth. Let's look at the situation in Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Let's look at the situation here. Moses' sister Miriam and his brother Aharon spoke out against him. And look at what Yah did to Miriam, Moses' sister. Numbers chapter 12, verse 1. It says, and Miriam and Aharon spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. That wasn't the issue. A lot of people say, well, that proves that the Israelites were white because they were mad that he married a black woman. No, that wasn't the issue. The real issue is right here in verse 2. And they said, had Yah indeed spoken only by Moses? Have he not also spoken by us? And Yah heard it. They was jealous of Moses. Moses was a grand prophet, and his brother and sister were jealous of him. So this is why they spoke out. They just used the Ethiopian thing as to nitpick with him. But Yah was upset that they said this. Let's skip down to verse 7. Numbers chapter 12, verse 7. Yah said, my servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all my house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. And the similitude of Yah shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Verse 9. And the anger of Yah was kindled against him, and he departed. Verse 10. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aharon looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. So within an instant, she went from a black-skinned woman to having no color in her skin at all to a white-skinned person. So once again, in Hollywood, they have all these Gentiles portraying portraying Miriam, Moses' sister. So if they look like these women here, what would have been? Yah showed his anger towards Miriam, and he struck her with leprosy. He was angry because she spoke against Moses. So if he's showing his anger, and if she was already a white-skinned Gentile, bam, turn her dark. Turn her to the same color as this sister right here. Right? Wouldn't that have been Yah showing his upset? But, I mean, how much whiter can you get even than this? So what is it telling us? What does the Bible tell us? That Sister Miriam more than likely look like this right here. Right? Or this right here. Israelite hairstyles. Let's look at that. We wore our hair in what the world calls today dreadlocks. We wore our hair in locks. In locks. Let's go to the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 5. Let's look at the Israelite Samson. His name was Shimshon. Let's look at the Israelite Shimshon or Samson. Numbers 6:5. It says, all the days of the vow of his separation. Now, Samson was what's called a Nazarite. Not Nazarene, but Nazarite. And the Nazarites took a vow unto Yah, and when they vowed unto Yah, they were never to bring a razor upon their head. So if he was a man, he was never to cut his hair, and he was never to cut his beard. Never have a razor upon his head. And he was never to drink fruit of the vine. He was never to do that because he couldn't have no wine. He couldn't have any of that stuff. Okay, so Numbers chapter 6, verse 5 tells us about the vow of the Nazarite. It says, all the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head, until the days be fulfilled, in the which he separated himself unto Yah. He shall be set apart or holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. The locks. Dreadlocks are called locks because of the intertwining of the hair that locks together. Your hair literally locks together. I have locks. Or what's called dreadlocks. And so everybody, just about all the Israelites that I know, we all wear locks. So this is referencing our hair right here. And to prove this, let's go to the book of Judges, chapter 16, verse 13. And Delilah said unto Samson, hereto you have mocked me, and told me lies. Tell me wherein thou might be bound. And he said unto her, if you weave or cut the 7 locks of my head with the web. Let's skip down to verse 19, Judges 16:19. And she made him sleep upon her knees, and she called for a man, and he caused him to be shaved of the 7 locks of his head, and she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. Samson only had 7 locks. Remember, he was never to bring a razor upon his head. So this man, from the moment he exited his mother's womb, he had taken this vow of a Nazarite. So he had never cut his hair, but he only had 7 locks. 7 are what you call dreadlocks. Now, our hair in its natural state, black-skinned people, is like the wool of a lamb. So if a black person does not cut or comb their hair, it will eventually lock together. Let's go to the book of Songs of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 11. Songs of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 11. It says, his head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. You see, when the new growth grow under our locks get bushy. Right now, mine is very bushy. His locks are bushy. He's talking about what we know as dreadlocks. Because the new growth grew under there and it's bushy, and we know that black people are born with black hair. The Egyptians wore locks too. Look at this. Look at these images of Israelites from the wall of Babylon wearing their hair in locks. We also wear hair in afros. We wear hair in braids. These are the ancient and modern Israelites with braids. Now, the scripture shows without a doubt in both the Old and New Testament times that Israel was a black-skinned people. Now, we've shown in this briefing here the historical and the archaeological evidence that the Egyptians were black-skinned people. We showed that the Hebrews, according to the Bible, looked just like those black-skinned Egyptians, and you couldn't tell them apart. The images that you are seeing on your screen right now are the Hollywood and religious versions of the ancient Egyptians and the children of Israel. As you have seen through this entire presentation, that these images are nothing but a big lie. They've been on screen and they've been told in stories for a long time, and they're still continuing to do it even in our modern times. But the Bible speaks for itself, history speaks for itself, and the archaeological records speak for itself. And you have seen what they had to say. So I pray that your understanding has been had, and that now you understand what the fullness of the ancient Egyptians and what the children of Israel look like physically. Now, what you're seeing as we close this out are images of ancient Egyptians and modern Egyptians. The so-called African American, the so-called Haitian, the so-called Jamaican, the so-called Dominican, so forth and so on. All of us that was brought here during the transatlantic slave trade into this hemisphere in slave ships and scattered around the world. We are the descendants of the ancient Israelites. Please check out part 2 to this called The Curses. The curses will without doubt identify all those Western Hemisphere people that were involved in the transatlantic slave trade as being the descendants of these ancient black-skinned Israelites. May the blessings of the Most High Yah be upon your mind. May you continue to understand His truth and His word through His Messiah, Yahushua. Hallelujah and Shalom.
IH set apart music. I understand the hard times we're going through right now. Problems we all face. And it's okay, you have a Father in the heavens who sees everything. Can I talk to my lonely people? Going through the struggle ride, so we have to hustle right, get it how we live, cause we don't know no other life than living in these projects, ran down apartment complex, been here for so many years, still ain't made much progress from slavery to civil rights, we still trying to get a slice of that piece of pie, so they dangle things in our face and watch as we get enticed, and our hearts get hardened, cause our children are starving, they locking up the innocent, and won't give them a pardon, from Brazil to Israel, India to UK, we all facing the same curses, doesn't matter where you stay, making corporation wealth like the only thing that we work for, sun up to sundown and you still end up dirt poor, or just barely making it, your income they taking it, put a tax on it, IRS come ain't no escaping it, living in these last days can make you feel like harmonious, in the lands of the phoniest, I'm talking to the loneliest, spread all across the globe, believe the Father knows. He sees your pressure and poverty, know that you are rich. Spread all across the globe, believe the Father knows.